Hello everyone, Juxtaposition here. Today's video will be entitled Name Game Juxtaposition. It's Friday, so let's have some fun with deception, diversion, and the name game. We're also going to do a juxtaposition because later in today's video I'm going to ask the question, what if Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart had arrived in Hollywood and been injected into the music industry? What do you think that would have been like? Where do you think Wolfgang Amadeus would have been given provisional housing? I'm guessing 750 Bel Air Road in the Beverly Hillbillies mansion. 28 bathrooms, tennis court, cement pond, looking directly onto the Sailor Drive murder scene of Sharon Tate and Abigail Folger. That's where I believe the housing that is currently consigned to Lachlan Murdoch would have been the home that the Mozart's family would have resided in. 28 bathrooms. Perfect for entertaining and chamber music. Alright, so let's have some fun here. Remember Jerry Lewis? Remember the nutty professor, Jerry Lewis, who happened to live on St. Cloud Road next door to Ronald Reagan? Ronald Reagan was at 666 St. Cloud Road, just below that Beverly Hillbillies mansion. The Beverly Hillbillies mansion is directly above the cul-de-sac dead end of St. Cloud Road, where Ronald Reagan was put up, right below Jed Clampett. Can't make this up. And also close proximity to Brian Wilson, who lived on Bellagio Road. Brian Wilson, who probably didn't write the music for the Beach Boys and did very little to arrange the melodies, but that's what the legend will have us believe. As if the Hollywood marketing people have ever told the truth about anything. Alright, so Jerry Lewis, that's not his name, right? So he changed his name to Jerry Lewis. His name is Joseph Levitz, spelled L-E-V-I-T-C-H. He was born in Newark, New Jersey. Joseph Levitz. He's Jewish. Here's another Hollywood celebrity, Milton Berle. Remember Uncle Milton? He was also known as Mr. Television because he came to prominence during the 1950s when television was being rolled out as the newest social engineering weapon tool. Well, Milton Berle is not his real name. His real name is Mendel Berlinger, and he's Yiddish. All right, Milton Berle, Mendel Berlinger. All right, so that was Uncle Milton. I met him. I met him at the Friars Club in Century City. I don't know, 1981, I believe. Milton Berle. And I'll tell you a little story. I saw him on my way out after I finished lunch. And he was in a booth with some other gentlemen, and I said, "Aren't you Milton Berle?" And he remarked to me, "Either that or I'm having a heck of a lot of fun with his wife." I'm sure he's told that joke a gajillion times. George Burns. Remember George Burns? He lived to age 100. George Burns. Not his real name. His real name is Nathan Beerbaum. Nathan Beerbaum. He was the 9th of 12 children born in New York City. George Burns, a.k.a. Nathan Beerbaum. Then there was Jack Benny. Remember, he poorly played the violin. Jack Benny. That's not his real name. His name is Benjamin Kabelsky, spelled K-A-B-E-L-S-K-Y. Benjamin Kabelsky. He lived at 1002 North Roxbury Drive, next door to Lucille Ball on one side. She was at 1000 North Roxbury. And Peter Falk, a Jewish man, Hungarian, Polish Jewish man from the Bronx, born in the Bronx, who portrayed himself as an Italian on and off screen, but he was Jewish. Peter Falk, he lived at 1004 North Roxbury Drive, flanking Benjamin Kabelsky, flanked by Lucille Ball on the north and Peter Falk to the south. And across the street to the west was Jimmy Stewart. All right, then we have Lenny Bruce, the foul-mouthed social engineering satirist Lenny Bruce. Not his real name. He's from Long Island, New York. His name is Leonard Alfred Schneider. And he was murdered at age 40 on Hollywood Boulevard in the West Hollywood hillside above the Comedy Store, which at that time I believe was being converted from Ciro's. It was the Ciro's nightclub, which is across the street from the Viper Room, where, remember, River Bottom Phoenix was murdered. River Bottom, another Jewish fellow, he was killed on Sunset Boulevard across the street from the Comedy Store, formerly known as Ciro's. All right, so Lenny Bruce, also known as Leonard Alfred Schneider. All right, then there was a fellow who was in a television presentation of The Fugitive. You may remember him as David Jansen, not his real name. His real name is David Harold Meyer. He's Jewish. And he died at age 40 in Malibu, California. He had a heart attack. So that, you know, with my research, you know, at age 40, you might think that could possibly be a murder, right? Anyway, who gave the eulogy at his Jewish service? Well, it was none other than Suzanne Pleshette. And that is her real name, Suzanne Pleshette. She's a Jewish girl from Brooklyn Heights, New York. Suzanne Pleshette, you may remember her from a Columbo episode known as Dead Weight. And she was the witness who saw the murder and then recanted and then reluctantly resaw the murder. Not that it mattered. Columbo implicated the murderer, United States Marine Corps general, because they found the murder weapon in the glass case on display, hiding in plain view. So we didn't need Suzanne Plechette's wishy-washy witness that never saw anything. Then we had another Jewish girl by the name of Stephanie Powers. She was actually born in Hollywood, and that's not her real name. Stephanie Powers, you may remember her from Heart to Heart with Robert Wagner and many other television shows. Suzanne Pleshette also starred in the Bob Newhart show. And Stephanie Powers was married twice, and she had a long 20 to 25 year, it's kind of unclear. I think she knew William Holden when she was in high school at Beverly Hills High School. Scratch that. She went to Hollywood High School. And Stephanie Powers' real name is Stefania Zofia Paul Federkiewicz. Stefania Sophia Paul Federkiewicz. Don't you think that would be a better Hollywood name than Stephanie Powers? Anyway, they changed it to Stephanie Powers. Then we had Lauren Bacall, who is a much younger woman married to Humphrey Bogart. She's Jewish, and her real name is Betty Joan Persky, spelled P-E-R-S-K-E. Lauren Bacall is Betty Joan Persky. She lived above the Sharon Tate murder scene, directly above. You know, where ABC Fake News found the bloody clothes. Right there, walking distance from where Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall lived. Very close, walking distance. It's the foot of their driveway, basically. Then we had Cass Elliot. Cass Elliott's real name is Ellen Naomi Cohen. She's Jewish. She was murdered at age 34 in central London near Hyde Park and Green Park, across the street from the Dorchester Hotel. Cass Elliot, murdered in London at age 34. Then we have David Lee Roth, who was the front man for Van Halen, which is a Warner Brothers band, Warner Brothers created band. I'm sure Warner Brothers had a lot to say about the lyrics of Running with the Devil and Ain't Talking About Love, and the satanic messaging that went into some of the early Van Halen songs. David Lee Roth is Jewish. He went to a private school called the Webb School in Claremont, California. That's where Henry Kravitz went. He went to the Claremont McKenna School, along with George Roberts. They're from KKR. KKR is a private banker on Sand Hill Road They're located at 2800 Sand Hill Road. That was Aaron Valente's last appointment was to KKR at 2500 Sand Hill Road, just the parking lot below where these Claremont McKenna College Jewish bankers went to school. They went to school where David Lee Roth went to school. Isn't that just hilarious? Anyway, David Lee Roth, that is his real name. He didn't change it. He stuck with that name. He was born in Bloomington, Indiana. You know, Indiana, that's home to Jim Jones. That's home to Gus Grisham and Neil Armstrong. They went to Purdue University in Indianapolis. It was home to Karen Perk Lamb, who was the first wife of Robert Lamb of Chicago. She then went on to marry and divorce Dennis Wilson twice. Karen Perk Lamb, she died mysteriously, I believe, age 42 in Playa del Mar, Mar Vista area, near Marina del Rey. Silicon Beach. All right, who else we got here? Oh, we got Madonna. Now, she's not Jewish. She was raised Roman Catholic, but she converted to Judaism and spent a lot of time at the Kabbalah Institute there on Wilshire Boulevard. She even has a Kabbalah Judaism name, Esther, spelled E-S-T-H-E-R. It's the same name as Seymour Cott's wife, Esther Blankfield Fisher. Yeah, Seymour Cott. Seymour Cott. K-A-T-T. Like, I see more and you'll get caught. Seymour Cott. You know, the neighbors closest to the Sharon Tate murder scene. They are technically around the corner from the hillside, so it is plausible that they wouldn't hear any screaming of Abigail Folger or Wojtek Frykowski or Stephen Parent being bayoneted to death or shot with the M16 rifles, because they are sheltered by an amphitheater partition, which is the hillside. You have to go to the property to understand what I'm talking about. But basically, those fake tenants, which are all CIA housing that are close to the crime scene, they are shielded from the noise on the property. You could have a porn shoot or a noisy party with a band, and you wouldn't hear it. It would echo out, of course, onto Benedict Canyon, to Walt Disney's home, or to where Jack Benny lived, where Peter Falk lived, where Lucille Ball lived, where Ronald Reagan lived. It would echo over to where Ronald Reagan and Jerry Lewis lived. Okay, let's see who else I got. Chelsea Handler, know her? She's an unfunny comedian who's very woke. She was born in New Jersey. Her name is Chelsea Joy Handler. Not much else to say about her except that her father's name is Seymour. Seymour? And he was a used car salesman and owned a used car dealership. Used car lot. Chelsea Handler's father was in the used car business, which also, in my experience, means he was a really good pathological liar. Chelsea Handler's father. Seymour Handler. And her mother was Mormon. I don't know what that means. Anyway, then what else I got here? Oh yeah, I got Paul McCartney's first wife and Linda Eastman, her second husband. Linda Eastman's first husband was very wealthy scion, inheritance heir, much wealthier than Paul McCartney ever was or would be. Linda Epstein's, her name is Epstein, but they changed the name to Eastman to sound less Jewish. Her father's name is Leopold Vale Epstein. They were born and raised in Scarsdale, New York. Leopold Vale Epstein is the father of Linda Eastman, who you know as Paul McCartney's first wife, first of 3 wives. His first wife was Jewish, and his current wife is Jewish also. All right, so, oh, then here's one. I don't know if she's Jewish, but she could be. Natalie Wood, not her real name. Her real name is Natasha Zankarenko. She was born in San Francisco and quickly moved to Van Nuys and to San Fernando Valley before she hit a home run with Orson Welles in Tomorrow is Forever. But we know tomorrow is not forever in the case of Natalie Wood, because she was murdered on November 28th, 1981, thrown into the ocean water at Santa Catalina Island at around 3 o'clock in the morning like a sack of potatoes. And Robert Wagner was there. And Robert Wagner was working with Stephanie Powers at the time of this murder of Natalie Wood, his wife. And Christopher Walken was there also. I'm sure Christopher Walken understood what happened. He's just not talking. Anyway, Natasha Zakharenko was Russian. You know, like Natasha the spy. Anyway, Natasha Zakharenko did a film with Orson Welles, and then at age 6, and then 37 years later she was murdered. And Sharon Tate did her last film with Orson Welles in Rome in the summer of 1969. She flew home to Los Angeles, and then she was murdered by NATO Gladio forces by bayonet. 16 times stabbed with an M7 bayonet at a porn scene, at a porn set, right there in Benedict Canyon, in the bullseye of Benedict Canyon, below the enchanted hillside. All right, now those are my name game examples, and my juxtaposition is, can you imagine if Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart had been scouted and sent out to Hollywood and signed a contract with Warner Brothers or Columbia Records or RCA Victor? Can you imagine? I believe they would have put him up at 750 Bel-Air Road, the Beverly Hillbillies mansion, where Jed Clampett and Granny and Ellie Mae and Jethro lived. And they would have had a real straight shot less than 700 yards away from where Sharon Tate and Abigail Folger was murdered, and where Timothy Leary lived. Timothy Leary lived at 10106 Sunbrook Drive, right below the ice plant from where Abigail Folger bled out. Timothy Leary lived there. Oliver Silverstein Stone visited that property. There's another name game juxtaposition. You know him as Oliver Stone, but his father's name was Silverstein. You know, like Larry Silverstein, who controlled the leases at the World Trade Center on buildings that were 70% empty. Yeah, the Twin Towers were 70% vacant at the time of their collapse. In other words, nobody died in a vacant office because nobody was in a vacant office. So you take the 30% that was rented, and most of those people got out before the buildings collapsed. But nevertheless, people did die. But I mean, it could have been a lot worse. It could have been a lot worse. Because if that building was 100% leased and people hesitated, then you would have had 15,000 people dead instead of 2,600 or 2,700 people dead. Anyway, if Mozart came to Hollywood, he'd probably be working with Phil Spector as his front man. Because I think Mozart would be the brains. He'd be out working on the Wrecking Crew, and he'd be writing music for Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin and Rosemary Clooney and Doris Day, and he'd be writing music for Madonna and Britney Spears and Michael Jackson and Quincy Jones and Julio Iglesias and Johnny Mathis, who I saw in person. All right, that's my show for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Hit the like and subscribe. We'll talk soon. Take care.